Hey, Duvid here. We are live back for my weekly tour of my library. So, Rune, thanks for tuning in. Tinkle, good to see you. So, it turns out Saturday night I just wasn't feeling like doing my Ask the Rabbi. It had to be a little bit of a mood, uh, talk to the camera and stream. So, God willing, I'll be back this coming Saturday night after Sabbath for my Ask the Rabbi stream number 16, I think. That will be the history of Chabad Lubavitch and the Lubavitch Rebbe Chabad movement. And actually, um, the author, Tolushkin, will be in Michigan in the beginning of February for an event at Oakland University. And I signed up to go to that. Tolushkin's father was the accountant for the Rebbe and wrote the popular biography of the Rebbe. So look forward to that Saturday night. And I have some interesting things to share. So let me just make sure I'm all caught up. Yeah, so I have some good books, some hopefully interesting insight, your recommendations to share. Something like I've worked in the business world. I day traded for a few years. I traded oil futures. I was involved in various real estate professional fields, contracting, building permits. Um, Plus just a rabbinic yeshiva background, where I have studied Talmud and know a lot of business people. Been involved in fundraising. I help collect money for Israel, Jewish related charities. Was relatively quite successful with that. No substantial amount of business owners, so on and so on. So I think I have a relatively decent feel for business. I'm a minor businessman. I work for myself. I do consulting, property management. I have an eBay business, commerce. But generally, I'm not that entrepreneurial. I'm kind of lazy in my work. Generally, I've only worked part time my whole life, God forbid, and haven't been that actively involved besides like the year and a half I day trading. That I really only worked part time towards making money. And kind of like Christianity, I have a decent amount of books on, like, I'm reasonably well read on the subject, but it's not a field that interests me that much. Generally, like 5% of what I read is on business. I read the newspapers regularly, and general knowledge of business. I maybe take like a follow the money attitude towards politics and other things. And understanding ownership. My mother was a corporate lawyer, so generally I have a decent understanding of ownership and how profit is generated, how people make their money, assessment of how much money or business ventures are made. So you'll get into some books on that. So just some interesting things before I start. Um, so when I came back to Metro Detroit, my parents were moving, and um, I didn't know, so much like, oh man, I'm going to stay in Detroit. I'm going to make a path, like work or business. I was almost certain I was going to go back to New York. And two things allowed me relatively to stay in Detroit that were able to fulfill my mental curiosity. Saying, okay, like Judaism's, um, I mean, there's some Judaism here, but so to say, not like high level rabbinic studies, smaller community that I didn't really fit in with. And I went to University of Michigan, but it wasn't New York. I didn't have the same stimulus. But my parents needed my help for a period of time, and to some extent, I'm still helping my parents. So I ended up staying in Michigan. One of the things that allowed me to stay was the Great Courses Teaching Company. So although I've largely stopped, hardly ever read books on business, economics, finance. Occasionally I buy a book or see something interesting. I listened to the teaching company courses as they came out. I listened to basically all of these courses. So if you see like finance and economics, they only have 30 courses. And, me and my dad probably have, well, I've indexed it. So I know we have over 600 courses, and I've listened to more that we don't have, online because I have the subscription also. You've seen professional and personal growth. There's over 100, and a lot of these are generic self-improvement. Some of them you could put into the realm of business related things, but none of them are directly like, public speaking, social media, uh, PowerPoint, um, law, cybersecurity, programming. I mean, these various things that they have in self-improvement. Um, Entrepreneurship, an important thing. But certainly like the basics from the economics and finance. So this is the latest one. I haven't watched this yet. Start late, finish rich. I think I saw a statistic once that the average age for opening up a business is actually in the 50s. So, Duvid may be now, entering more phase of business venture of, I didn't even have e-commerce, or you may be buying property, landlordship, or something. I would be starting in the second half of my life. But I've listened to all these courses. Um, they're all pretty interesting. But I like history also, with economic history of the world since 1400. I'm going to talk about behavioral economics in related field to psychology and consciousness studies, like Kahneman and Tversky are involved in behavioral economics. Scott Page from University of Michigan on complexity. I'll show his book I have on difference, on diversity. Thinking about capitalism, I showed his book on Jews and capitalism, Jerry Muller, and also his history of conservatism. So these are all pretty good courses. And, I've listened to all of these: history of the U.S. economy in the 20th century, legacy of great economists. I think they might have more. I'm not sure if they have another section on business. They had one like great traders, but saying that I have some insight. And I said edX. I spent like 3 years of my life. I was here in Detroit and didn't have much to do, and I'm kind of a proactive person, and I like education. So you could see 808 items in finished edX courses, and the first one I started in 2016. And I think the last one I took was maybe in like 2019 that they started charging money for them. And the first one even I took was from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, operations management. And I basically just took everything. Like I like information and education, but I probably took like 50 business courses and even like basic economics. And I even, I took these courses, I passed these courses. So a lot of these courses, I actually like, solve problems in mathematics and, like supply and demand curves. I took the MIT courses, the Harvard courses, for, the Microsoft courses, computer programming courses, the international electrical engineering courses, the Linux Foundation, a lot of courses out of University of Delft, and they started charging for them. So I probably still would have been taking them, machine learning courses, and but like I had a pretty good foundation of business from taking all these edX courses. But it's been a while since I took my last edX course. I think now they charge a bunch. So like I'm not even on edX anymore. I haven't checked their site for a long time. But I used to just check their new courses and sign up for them, and I basically spend like hours every day taking edX courses, and I actually like passed 800 of them. So like not only a lot of the courses. Hey Jim, shalom, good to see you. So I actually passed most of these courses, and took the tests. And for a while they also had like the world not the World Economic form, but like the international bank had courses, and I took all those courses on bookkeeping and various things, and I even did like the mathematics and passed their tests. So so God bless edX that gave me a little basis of economics. And so the last thing, breaking news, Duvid now has my own webpage. So duvid.com is out. So it turns out that I took myself off of chess. I was spending too much time playing chess, and chess is kind of an unfriendly game anyways. And I published my articles on Review, the free Twitter service, and like Facebook no longer has notes. So I bought duvid.com. I have a provisional, I think, 4-month or trial on GoDaddy, which I'll probably renew. So now duvid.com, consciousness researcher, put up some photos about me, activities, interests, and my blog. So my blog's back up. So all of my articles, you could see 3D printing, additive manufacturing, the HIMSA principle, cognitive dissonance, critical theory, the Frankfurt School, and the cognitive revolution, mystical approaches to the meaning of chess, the hero's journey in music and chanting, Kotov's chess candidate moves, analysis trees, and decision making, memory techniques and chunking theory, psychological theories of self and identity formation, origins and basics of the multiple truth hypothesis, and the science of consciousness conference. So I look forward to getting back to writing. So I've been doing week in review. Jennifer's been working on her writing with Chat GPT. So hopefully she's making some progress. But I decided to be more proactive. So I got myself my own webpage, and I reposted all my blog posts. So if anyone enjoyed my blog post, you could check them out on duvid.com. And hopefully starting next week, I'm going to go back to writing some of the topics. I think I'm going to, I hit a standstill with my theory, identity formation, theories of self was a really pretty big topic. I had mentioned in some of my essays the cognitive revolution. So I might do a separate essay in some of my research that I hadn't shared yet on the cognitive revolution, like Noam Chomsky, Newell, and Simon, and the 40s and 50s and the creation of cognitive science. And I'm doing some research right now on A Purple Thanks on panpsychism and dualism, for week in review, some major topics, maybe to help Jennifer with her writing. I'm reading some books right now on panpsychism, the history, the current state of research. So hopefully I'll write over the next few weeks. I'll get back into writing and immediate topics, cognitive revolution, panpsychism, and dualism. And then also hopefully on laughter. Stop laughing. Laughing is bad character, but Duvid will share some of my research on laughter. So with that, let's get to the books. And so I have quite a few interesting books to share. I have some pretty good books. Like I've read, some of the major books, some of the key things. I've read some of the stuff online. Like I read online constantly. So I read newspapers every day also. So thanks, Purple. So let me think how I'm going to do this. I'll start with this because these are some of the first books I read. And Duvid started day trading and was mildly successful. Church Ventry, thanks for joining. So if you heard, I plan on getting back to writing in the next few weeks. I don't think I'm going to do one this week, but hopefully next week. And so the topics will hopefully, first I'll write a separate essay on the cognitive revolution that we've talked about at length, and I just got a few books on panpsychism, and so then I'll probably do panpsychism and dualism, and then maybe monism. So I'll try to write some articles relevant to stuff we talk about in Week in Review, and also still looking to go to the Science of Consciousness conference in Sicily at the end of May. I was looking online, like God forbid, plane tickets are like $1,500. Just it may be more. And they mentioned they might have hotel rooms as 2-star hotel rooms for as cheap as €100 a night, and those might even be like just putting random people in the conference together in the same rooms. So it's probably, as I said, it's probably going to cost like $3,000 to go to the Science of Consciousness conference. So my plan is I want to do it. So I'm going to try to be more serious about it and justify that investment. So hopefully hear about that more soon. But so I'll try to write on topics that will position myself more for the Science of Consciousness conference. But so the first one will probably be the cognitive revolution, because I have some of the research that's still sitting on my desk related to the identity and self formation, which hopefully I'll also complete over once I start writing again, and then panpsychism and dualism. Then we'll see from there. And stay tuned for one on laughter. So let's get to the books. So Duvid day traded for 2 years, was mildly successful. I took out of the market hundreds of thousands of dollars, although most of it went into commissions. So like I was a day trader, and for maybe I made about $100,000 for myself, maybe another $100,000 for my employers, and another like $300,000 in commissions, because like I was taking out $1,000 of the market every day, but I was doing so many trades that it was just vast majority was going to commissions, if people know how day trading works. So I actually, in Israel, I'd read the biography of the Reichmans, and I knew quite a bit of people in real estate, and also the Gutnicks in Australia. Like I'd seen the Gutnicks and from Australia, but I didn't really read any books on finance till I started day trading. And when I started day trading, there weren't really many books on it. And I mentioned the books that changed my life, The Reminiscence of a Stock Operator, which I don't have that book anymore. But the books that changed my life, I'd mentioned Reminiscence of a Stock Operator, that was written as like a fictionalized account of the biography of Jesse Livermore, who was one of the first major day traders, stock traders, that was like a poor guy from the country, came to the city and was able to make a little bit of money. Maybe in the beginning he was trading other people's money to get a share of the profit, and he was able to become one of the richest people in America, and he made a bunch of money. He lost his money. He has an interesting biography. So this is his biography. I'd mentioned on the 13 books that changed my life, Reminiscence of a Stock Operator, which was written by a journalist as a fictionalized account of his life. But that was 2 books that when I started day trading, they recommended. So that and The Electronic Day Trader. So this and Reminiscence of a Stock Operator were the 2 books that they wanted you to read to day trade. This was written by some of the founders, Mark Friedberger and George West. The man I worked for, Dave Shine, who's still in the business, worked together with these 2 guys. And there was like a split off in the companies. And, someone I'd studied with in Israel and made a whole bunch of money. And he was backing traders. And I was kind of like a chess genius, pretty good at math and numbers. So he ended up backing me. And so this was the very first book. So like day trading was kind of just like a numbers thing. I sat next to actually Dave Shine for a few weeks and watched him in action to learn. And then my other boss, who ended up putting up the money for me. I could have went one of two ways. They had a split off, and you get into that a different time. It's not important for the matter, but this book may not even be applicable anymore. I think this still had like fractions. You were talking about like level 2 and the basics. This book was written when the NASDAQ still used fractions. And then there was another book, How to Get Started Day Trading. I think I bought this one later. Another basic, just the essentials of day trading. So those were some early books that I read. I'm not sure if any of those books are really that good, but just kind of history. Some of these other books are more academic. So these are books I bought later after, so like even when I was day trading, I didn't really study much business. It was kind of just like a numbers game. And I did a little research into the companies that they were, what they did were mostly tech companies. So here's the New Commodity Trading Guide, Breakthrough Strategies for Capturing Market Profits. Pretty good book. George Kleinman. Like after I graduated University of Michigan, I tried commodity equity trading again. And, so I read a few books on it, and I turned out I wasn't successful at it the last time. And I mirrored trades from my home for like 3 months, an online employer, and then never went anywhere. But it shows quite a bit of interesting things, like Forex Shark probably understands this stuff. There's better books than these. Maybe if I stream again with Forex Shark, we talk more. A lot of it's mathematical. Here's another interesting book, Dollar and Yen, Resolving Economic Conflict Between the United States and Japan. And this book, like, is an older book now, like currency, and talks about arbitrage. This book's 1997, when like in Forex, the Forex came out, I think in like the late 2000s already, when the Forex came out. So like it used to be difficult to trade commodities. You like needed a brokerage house, and the major commodities that people traded were the dollar and yen. Through like the 80s and 90s, maybe even to 2000, like the rise of like BRICS and India and China, major commodities involve the dollar and the yen. So this is like a classic book about commodities trading, just focusing on the U.S. and Japan, but you get a basic understanding of commodities. And then when I was trading this was currencies. I never traded currencies. Forex Shark used to trade currencies, and I guess Bitcoin you could consider a currency. Duvid traded stocks and then commodities. And the major commodity I traded was oil. And so when I was trading oil, I bought this book, God forbid, the asylum, the renegades who hijacked the world's oil market. God forbid, the inmates are running the asylum. And talks about how traders, largely just speculators, took over the world's oil market, and gives a history. It's written by Leah Goodman, Jewish journalist who knew a lot about the commodities. When I day traded, actually, the owner of the office who passed away, God forbid, Shlomo Meyer, rest in peace. His family had actually owned seats on the commodities exchange and was an oil trader. But I wasn't involved in commodities trading than just day trading. And it was after University of Michigan I got back involved into commodities trading, oil trading from my house through a company in Chicago. And there's main commodities exchanges in Chicago and New York. But this is a good book covering the history of historically commodities trading, oil, and then how traders basically overtook the main players. That speculators had made so much money and adjusted the markets to speculative trading from the historical, purpose of the commodities markets for like hedging bets, or for growers or producers, miners. This also, I could have put this with my. I have books on technology that I forget if coming up over the next sneak. Okay, Jim, thanks for tuning in. So, Chaos Monkeys, Obscene Fortune, Random Failure in Silicon Valley. and this is more tech companies, boom and bust cycles of companies, and also interesting. You'll feel for Silicon Valley and the making of fortunes through the formations of tech companies related to commodities. I read these books. Actually, I didn't even read these books. This one I read part of, and they had like a 10-part documentary on. Um, Actually, a Jewish man, the prize, the epic quest for oil, money, and power by Daniel Yergin, and this is probably like Pulitzer Prize winner, most famous book on oil, and he covers basically the world's oil markets and the history, Rockefeller, the American, the global struggle, the various players, and then he has a sequel, the Quest, Energy, Security, and the Remaking of the Modern World. And I was kind of more just a day trader. When I was trading oil, it was just the numbers game and technical analysis. From a higher level oil trading, there's a lot of information out there. Basically, people know the state of the global suppliers and various international events that are going to affect the commodity trade. What's happening in Africa and South America, Middle East politics, as opposed to just checking the numbers. And Daniel Yergin's books are some of the main books on oil. So let me put these back on my shelf. I'll just show these real quick too. This I'll put one of my classics. I read this when I was in high school. This I don't know what happened to it, but I don't think maybe I even just took it out from the library. Here's a recent copy my dad gave me, Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. And E. Michael Jones, Barren Metal, The History of the Capitalism and the Conflict Between Labor and Usury. And you can see to Duvid, Merry Christmas, E. Michael Jones. People remember with Brundlefly, and Duvid said he's the user's one. Look how much money he's charging for his books, and he ended up sending me a free copy of his most expensive book, Barren Metal, and that was already like 2 years ago, and it's been sitting on my desk. I'm like 1,000 pages into it, 1,400 pages. So I thought I'd show that real quick. Barren Metal, E. Michael Jones. Okay, so these are important books. I don't think I've read Rushkoff's Google Bus. Like I'm not in too much into reading on business or economics. The subject is not that interesting. I've read a little. I have I'll show in the next few weeks my books on technology and the internet, and I have like the history of Bell Labs and Intel, Google, Facebook. Some of these like just basic history, but it's not a subject that interests me all that much. I did end up ordering Jerusalem pizza on Christmas. The local kosher pizza place was open. No, I not. They don't even have kosher Chinese here in Metro Detroit, but I did go to Jerusalem Pizza, which was open. So these are important books that for understanding the current state of politics and economics and government policy. A lot of these are well-known, famous books. So I think even when I was in University of Michigan, Luke Ford maybe's talked about this book, Capital in the 21st Century, Thomas Piketty, that talks about inequality, the direction of world economics, various governmental systems, income, capital income ratio, uh, focusing mostly on inequality and regulation. So Piketty's Capital, Frenchman. I think this was translated from the French. This was, I'm not sure if it won like some sort of prize or something, but this was a very popular book. And then I read his second book, also translated from French, Capital and Ideology, Thomas Piketty. And this one has more a history of the various systems of economics, mostly focusing on inequality, um, slaves, colonial states. Um, the I think he says there's three main ways to structure societies, and then the great transformations of the 20th century. So the Piketty books, I don't even say they're like required reading, but they were some of the biggest things in politics and economics of the last few years. So I read these books. They're long books. I think I even showed this book on Luke Ford when I got it. These are like long, dense books, but pretty important for politics, especially inequality is such a big issue. Um, here, also an important book, Harry Dent, The Demographic Cliff, How to Survive and Prosper During the Great Deflation of 2014 to 19. So this book is already a few years old. It came out in 2014, and it's talking about the proposed demographic cliff that we're facing, and the problems that the U.S. economy is likely facing, and that the economic growth of the United States is likely hit a roof and will start going down. There's another book that's probably more dense and academic on the topic of The Rise and Fall of American Growth by Robert Gordon, and the U.S. standard of living since the Civil War. So going over the history of the standard of living in the U.S. and the various indicators, and also pointing to the fact that we're in some trouble here in the U.S. and the standard of living is on the decline, and what led to growth economically in the United States is likely coming to an end. So these books, Gordon, The Rise and Fall of American Growth, The Demographic Cliff, Thomas Piketty's Capital and Ideology, and Capital. These are good, important books related to understanding politics and economics. And Duvid talks generic, rambling on topics. Streaming. I gained a lot from these books. And another one, The Birth of Plenty: How the Prosperity of the Modern World Was Created. And I have a lot of history, but just saying, what is prosperity? How do we have so much excess wealth? How did that situation come to be? And why might that collapse? Judas, shalom to our friends in California. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, and while I'm on that, these are some general books of history of economics. This one I bought actually when I was in New York. Very good book, The Origins of Value, the Financial Innovations that Created Modern Capital Markets. And it's edited by Goetzman and Rollinghurst. And it has a lot of pictures and just a historical overview of finance and economics. I think I even read this one twice, The Origins of Value. I read in New York and then also in Detroit. The Origins of Value, Financial Innovations that Created Modern Capital, big pictures, long 1,000-year history of economics. This is a famous book, I think also translated from French, Fernand Braudel, The Structures of Everyday Life, Civilization and Capitalism from the 15th to 18th century, where talks about the structure of everyday life for hundreds of years in Europe, and what did people eat? How much did people eat? Land ownership, farming, housing, clothes, technology, energy, city structure, social structure, money, various things. An important historical book. This is an interesting book, Church of Entropy. Maybe, I'm not sure if I ever mentioned it. It could also be related to the history of mathematics. Against the Gods, The Remarkable Story of Risk by Peter Bernstein. And, so the history of risk, which is directly related to the creation of equity markets and insurance. And so I mentioned in one of my essays on Kotov and decision trees that it comes out of economics and your behavioral economics and the concept of equity and dice games and game theory. And then, in early Italian history, you have a little history of it in the first insurance, mostly related to boating. But it's an interesting historical take, specifically related to the connection between risk and economics. Here, David Graeber, Debt, the First 5,000 Years, a History of Debt. And obviously, debt has been around. There's the concept of borrowing something in the Talmud. There are hundreds of pages of the Talmud that deals with borrowing something, and if it doesn't come back, or if it's damaged, or if it's stolen, the Code of Hammurabi, the Greeks, the Romans, all ancient cultures had the concept of debt and rules related to what happens if you don't pay the person back or it gets damaged while it's borrowed. To the current conceptions about, I was mentioning last week in law, my mother's a bankruptcy, lawyer, debtor creditors. And this one's kind of conspiratorial. I have a few of these also. A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind. And so this is kind of a conspiratorial history of central banking. And it actually also talks about usury in the ancient period in Rome and in the first banks and through the modern era, with a minor conspiratorial slant to it, focusing on central banking. Okay, so here are more books on kind of history of banking. This one's also semi-conspiratorial, Web of Debt, The Shocking Truth About Our Money System and How We Can Break Free by Ellen Brown, and about the creation of the Federal Reserve and the current fiscal system here in the U.S. The other one I mentioned, this is one of the 13 books that changed my life, The Creature of Jekyll Island, a second look at the Federal Reserve that really has an exceptional breakdown of semi-conspiratorial view, but also has a lot of mainstream history and understanding of how the system works of the Federal Reserve. So I said this is one of the books I mentioned, the 13 books that changed my life, and honestly, highly recommend this one. So here's a generic book, Oxford, Big Business, the European Experience in the 20th Century. I'm not even sure why I bought this or read it, but it's interesting. Just big business and banking, and how the European banking system works. This is a pretty good book, Organizing America, Charles Perlow, Pero, Wealth, Power, and the Origins of Corporate Capitalism. And, now obviously corporations run almost everything. But, I think might have like Rockefeller and Carnegie and some of the steel and oil magnates, but, the creation of during the industrialization of America and corporate world that now has morphed into other things. The manufacturers, car manufacturing today, big tech. So important book, Organizing America. Um, Niall Ferguson, The Ascent of Money, Financial History of the World. I have quite a few. Niall Ferguson now is the good fellows at the Hoover Institute. So reasonably good long view history. Another good book, Capitals of Capital, A History of International Financial Centers, 1780 to 2005, talking about central exchanges and the history of banking, London, Belgium, Amsterdam, and New York. And The Last Partnership by Charles Geist, Inside the Great Wall Street Money Dynasties, the last partnerships. And, to some extent, a lot of these partnerships are still remnant today, like, Goldman Sachs, various big name people that teamed up and created our financial system. And I'm sure if this was taught, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Kidder Peabody, Lehman Brothers. So interesting history of these great partnerships that created American finance. Here, the Bilderberg Group, Daniel Itulin, a lot of conspiracy theory, but group of European royalty, mega billionaires, U.S. political leaders meeting, the Bilderberg Group for tens of years, Rothschilds, big names. So not specific to banking, more specifically the Bilderberg Group, but definitely a big effect on finance and banking and other things. Here, God's Bankers, The History and Money and Power in the Vatican by Gerald Posner, which is a Jewish author, maybe even somewhat anti-Vatican, but a history of the Vatican's own banking network. The Vatican has its own banks and networks and capital. And this is an interesting book. I think my sister gave me this as a present. The Creation of Wealth, the Tatas from the 19th to the 21st century. So my sister gave me this book, and pretty interesting. The Tatas who are Zoroastrian, minority in India, like the chess tournament Tata Steel. Tatas have a conglomerate, one of the wealthiest families in India, and network for generations, multiple generations, still very powerful in India and globally today in multiple fields. So it has an overall history of the Tata family. The Lords of Finance, The Bankers Who Broke the World by Liaquat Ahmed, another kind of like history of the big banking houses. Another Niall Ferguson, Empire, The Rise and Demise of the British World Order and the Lessons for Global Power. Put this in history, but I put it also economics, good overview of, I might even move this to, Niall Ferguson's economist, but obviously the British Empire dominated business, and is most law today is based on the English language and the remnants of British colonialism. I have more Niall Ferguson's book here, Money and Power, How Goldman Sachs Came to Rule the World by William Cohn interesting history of Goldman Sachs, one of the most important banks in the world. Here's Niall Ferguson's The Rothschilds, Volume 1 and 2, The House of Rothschilds, Money's Profit, 1798 to 1848, and The House of Rothschild, The World's Bankers, 1849 to 1999. So Niall Ferguson, I watched The Goodfellows Hoover Institute almost weekly. Okay, Judas, thanks for tuning in. And so one of his definitive first early works was The House of Rothschild, that he actually wrote with the help of the Rothschild family, and the Rothschild family let him look at some of their personal archives. And Ron Chernow's The Warburgs, one of the first, earlier than the Rothschilds, because the Rothschilds really come into banking about 300 years ago, as where the Warburgs were involved in banking for over 600 years. I'm not sure if the Warburgs are still prominent, or if there is even still a Warburg Bank, and what it developed into. But the Warburgs were one of the first major Jewish banking families, and were extremely prominent in banking through the World War II. I didn't even see the Hoover Institute and Anthony Sutton. I didn't follow, I just watched the Goodfellows, so I wasn't following their internal politics. I'm not even sure I'm familiar with Sutton. Okay, pounding through these pretty quickly. So random. This book was written by Dan Gilbert. I went to an event in Detroit at Wayne State Law School where Dana Benson interviewed Dan Gilbert when Jocelyn Benson was still dean of Wayne State Law School, and they handed out this book to everybody, Dan Gilbert's Isms for Action. It's kind of lame, just a bunch of memes or self-improvement type things, even kind of like self-glorification. Here are some law books. So this is actually a very good book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Business Law. I think this was a University of Michigan textbook I bought, and I read this pretty carefully. What you need to know about business law for an entrepreneurial. This is also a famous book, The Modern Corporation and Private Property by Adolph Burrell and Gardner Means. Maybe more a law book, but certainly, when you found a business, it has to be a corporation, and the details of which kind you want, a LLC, a C corp, or S corp, or this is like the legal theory book of Modern Corporation and Private Property by Burrell and Means. This is an MIT book. This was actually pretty good. Democracy, Governance, and Economic Performance, which theory and evidence, talking about the relation between government system and economic systems and politics. And a short one, International Project Finance, Westlaw in a nutshell. So I got this related to construction, but just random. The law, how to finance an international project, what you might need to know about the law. And some more random books. So here's Alan Greenspan, The Age of Turbulence. I actually got this when I was in New York, when Greenspan, I'm not sure if, I think he maybe had already retired, or, this, uh, like 2005 or 6, this was 2007. Um, I got this at University of Michigan with like a socialist student club meeting. I think I showed another book related to law, Henry George, Progress and Poverty, um, Why There Are Recessions and Poverty Amid Plenty and What to Do About It. And William George, Theory of Wages, and it claims that Henry George 100 years ago was one of the most widely read authors on economics. We challenged the system about landed property, and now it's kind of like popular reviving among socialists. So I got this at a student club meeting at the University of Michigan, socialist student club meeting that I popped into, and Muhammad Yunus, Creating a World Without Poverty, Special Business, Social Business and the Future of Capitalism. I think I got this also, like Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize and popular author and speaker. So I got this and read this book over a decade ago. Some interesting things. Microfinancing was one of his big things back a while ago. I'm not sure if he's still around or. Okay, and actually pounding right through these. So everyday exchanges, Market Working Capitalist Common Sense by Evan Watkins, Stanford University book about challenging familiar assumptions within cultural studies, uh, talking about the relationship of economics to culture. Random book, interesting. I took some courses on edX on this also. Asian Business Customs and Manners, a country by country guide by Mary Bazrak. Some important things to know, I haven't read this before I got involved in Hinduism, but important things for international travel or business or dealing with different cultures. So this I mentioned when I debated Jean-Francois Garepi on multiculturalism, the difference, how the power of diversity creates better groups, firms, schools, and societies. Scott Page, a professor at the University of Michigan economics, and I mentioned he teaches a course on the Teaching Company. And here is his big book, The Difference, on the benefit of diversity, specifically related to economic performance. This was a really good book. I exceptionally enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. It's only I put it in economics, paying for the party, how college maintains inequality. And it was partially conducted at University of Michigan, Elizabeth Armstrong and Laura Hamilton talking, following sorority girls and the different outcomes that they come from school. And, God forbid, kind of showing that education doesn't necessarily help people from poorer backgrounds and has a more benefit on people from higher social economical backgrounds, and the student loan crisis and various things. And important book, how much does university help people and the nature of student loans and sorority life, paying for the party, how college maintains inequality, Armstrong and Hamilton. They highly recommend this book. Here's some random books. Creating Value in the Network Economy. It's kind of generic, like self-help and how to understand the network economy and improve your business standing. Another interesting book, Global Shift by Peter Dickens, Transforming the World Economy. You're talking about globalism and things to look for in terms of preparing yourself for the 21st century economy. Transparency and Global Change. University of Pittsburgh book, Holster and Holzer, The Vanguard of the Open Society. So, important topic in business and banking, government is transparency. So a little history and the value of transparency, interesting, important book. Ethical Markets, Growing the Green Economy, Henderson, talking about environmentalism or ethicalness. It's became more important in the last few years, boycott type sentiments and divestment from companies that are unethical or that do environmental damage, how to look at a new take on capitalism with more care about ethics. And here are two early books that I read. Susie Orman, The Road to Wealth. Susie Orman, I'm not sure if she was CNBC anchor, just a generic book towards financial knowledge and prosperity. And The Unofficial Guide to Investing by Lynn O'Shaughnessy. So that actually does my business and economic books. So I say I don't actually have that many books on the subject. Relatively, I still have like over 50 books. Reasonably well read. No important information, but it's not a topic. For Duvid, who's always reading. Relatively, it's not a topic that I put a substantial amount of time into. These are all textbooks. I think they were giving away textbooks at University of Michigan, and I just took them, and I don't even think I ever read these, but I'm pretty sure that they were like randomly like giving them away. Some of them I flipped through. So this, Modern Portfolio Theory and Investment Analysis would be like an investment banking textbook. Another one, Investment Analysis for Real Estate Decisions. This one I think actually flip through. This one may have actually been a textbook for a University of Michigan class, or maybe I bought this one. I think I flipped through it. I'm actually going to put this with my civil engineering books. This one's an interesting one. I flipped through it a little bit. Technology Ventures from Idea to Enterprise, textbook on just how to go about the business aspect of technology. I'd mentioned I took the University of Michigan Engineering 520 Entrepreneurialism for Engineers that had a lot of information about that. Also, another Black's Inside Investment Banking. Another interesting one, Transnational Management. These are textbooks. I said I don't think I actually read these. I bought them for some reason, or maybe they were being given away at some time University of Michigan. I took a few of them. Marketing Management, Cases in Marketing Management, and the global directory of financial information vendors. So random books that were given away at University of Michigan that I took. And I have a handful of books that I have in my to read section. So these are books I plan on reading. I think I read this book. This book I had in my boxes of stuff from New York, although I couldn't remember if I'd read it before, so I put it in my to read pile. The Levers of Riches, Technological Creativity and Economic Progress, and relating technological progress to economics. This I also bought in New York. It's kind of old. Maybe I'll flip through it. All the Money in the World, How the Forbes 400 Make and Spend Their Fortunes. This one I think I was a University of Michigan textbook, and the Chinese economy, transitions and growth. China's always in the news. Know a little bit about it. So these are books I have in my to read pile. The Tycoon, Cornelius Vanderbilt. My mother just gave me this book. I think my mother bought it, and Pulitzer Prize. My mother bought it and just read it and gave it to me. Cornelius Vanderbilt. I actually had two of these. I put one of these up for sale. Banking on Global Markets, Deutsche Bank in the United States, 1870 to present. So just a history of Deutsche Bank. And From the American System to Mass Production, 1800 to 1932. And this may actually be more about manufacture than economics. So just looking at, I think this is actually more about manufacturing processes than economics. But I'm going to put all these in my to read pile. So looks like I finished up early. So maybe a short program. We ran an hour. I'm not sure who's watching. If anyone wants to hop on or talk, I'll put the link in the chat. I guess no need to go forever on this. I'll re-mention I have duvid.com going for my schedule coming up. Ask the Rabbi 16, hopefully this Saturday night. I have Ask the Rabbi 17 scheduled. Next week is Martin Luther King Day is on Monday, so I thought I would do my books on African and Black culture and Native American books. And then the week after, my books on manufacture, engineering, technology, and science. And the week after that, psychology, linguistics, consciousness, and philosophy books. And then February 8th, Michigan and Detroit books. And that will actually conclude all of my books in my library. So that those where I have full shelves on, and I have more books like around my house or books that I'm selling. And most of the books now I'm reading online just because I stopped buying books. Like 2 years ago, I just stopped buying books. But it's been an interesting exercise for me to go over some of these books, think about what I've been doing, and like how I'm going to move forward. And so business economics is important to be financially literate. It's important to understand the financial aspect of politics and world events. And I've talked about with Church of Entropy many times of one approach, possibly a Judaic related approach to money and karma. that a financial approach to karma. One of my popular streams, I talked about the history of usury, and I think that's one of my better viewed videos. So on my channel, um, my third most popular video, usury public study session, right before I talked to E. Michael Jones, has close to 6,000 views. So if anyone's interested in that, I think Brundle's on it, and that one still gets regular uh, viewership. And I also have a semi-popular uh, video on the roles of Jews in finance, a public study session, um, Jewish historical role in finance and creation of the equity markets. And that one still gets semi-regular views, close to 1,000 views. So, it's important topics. I've worked in financial fields. I'm financially literate. Thank God. Like usually I know a lot of people in management and equity and wealth and various things. It's good to understand these things, but it's not my concentration. So it's something that I don't spend much time investigating or reading, more than like the news or my personal subsistence, and I don't even put that much into my own business. Um, so we'll see moving forward. Anything more than that, but two full shelves on the subject. Um, so I guess I'm just going to wrap up. Nothing special to share. So appreciate people tuning in. Keep this one short and sweet, and hopefully see you Saturday night for Ask the Rabbi number 16, where I will present the history of the Chabad Lubavitch movement and a little bit about the Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson. And then next week I will do my um, African culture or Native American books, and that might also be relatively a shorter stream. And so God bless everyone. Have a great night and great week. Thanks for tuning in.